All right, so what did religious fanatics in 1600s England think about the perfect human diet? Today, we're going to find out about one figure in particular. All right, hello and welcome back to Threpticon. Today, we're going to talk about John Robbins, an early English vegetarian. So, who was John Robbins? He lived in the 1600s in England. He was an English ranter. So, what does this mean, ranters? So, it was commoner radicals that came to prominence in the period of the English Civil War and directly after. So typically they didn't have education, but some of them they started preaching. Many of them were involved in religious societies, and they tried to change society at large, change its values. Let's see, many of them had ideas that were considered heretical and dangerous, and they were put in prison. John himself had some trouble with the authority. So John rose to prominence as a preacher and the leader of a religious movement. Confusedly, his followers were called Shakers, and don't confuse them with the 18th and 19th century Shakers. Um, Same idea though; they did shake and quake, talking about the Holy Spirit. So he was persecuted and imprisoned, and then he apologized, and then he was set free, and he lived a quiet life in the country, not causing any more ruckus. Um, he was famous because he claimed to be Adam, right? And then Christ incarnate. So Adam was Adam, Christ was the second Adam, and John Robbins called himself the third Adam. He was to restore the purity that was present before the fall of man, right? He claimed to be a more than a prophet and gained a number of followers. As a consequence, he was considered a dangerous heretic. He was sort of dangerous to religious institutions, to the government, definitely. Um, I'm sure they would have called him something like a cult. He was considered something like a cult leader. Um, so here's from the book Bloodless Revolution, which is one of the greatest books ever written, really. And it describes Adam's situation, Adam slash John Robbins, a return to Eden. The original Adam lived on the pure fruits of Eden, so it is logical for Robbins to insist that his followers should adhere to Paradise's strict vegetable diet. And here's from the Dictionary of National Biography. Robbins broached a scheme for leading a host of 144,000 persons to the Holy Land. Joshua Garment was to be his Moses for this expedition. The volunteers were prepared by a diet of dry bread, raw vegetables, and water, a regime which proved fatal to some of them. All right. And there's no kind of citation of who it proved fatal for, why. I mean, you could speculate. Maybe people were eating severe calorie deficits. Maybe they're doing a lot of physical labor, walking around a lot. Um, I don't know. I don't know who died. I mean, let me put it this way. I don't know why they died. One can only speculate. Um, but that's an interesting idea of kind of severe dieting as giving you some kind of spiritual reward, like they were prepared for their epic journey to return to the Holy Land. And at this time, a lot of English people viewed themselves as a lost tribe of Israel, that they just needed to return home, right, to the Holy Land, where all the scriptures are about, and so on and so forth. So these ideas were more common than one might think. So here are some basic ideas of Robbins and other ranters. So a biblical prophecy realized, right, that the second coming, things like that. Most of them believed in some kind of communism, like living in a commune, just a community, everyone's equal, no property, things like that. Definitely return to Eden is a huge idea, and that's evinced above all by the diet, vegetarianism, Edenic diet, just eat fruits, but it's a problem, England, there's, fruit is very scarce and it's available, in certain seasons. So, what are you going to do in February, March, April, May, there's no fruit. So eating bread, and then they describe eating sort of common weeds, things like dock, and who knows, I'm picturing purslane and dandelions, things like that. And also nudism and all this dancing and music, had to do. I mean, the nudism had to do with returning to paradise. Some of them believed in pantheism and the supremacy of nature, God's creation as evidence of his divineness, and they kind of worshipped nature. Um, and then just in general, the idea of religious fervor, changing institutions, and all of this is somewhat a product of the English Civil War and the turmoil and the chaos and the trauma that it caused. Today we're going to stop with that for today. So I thank everyone for watching, and I'll see you next time. Bye.